Waynesville, located in the beautiful Smoky Mountains in western North Carolina, was obtained by American militias in 1776 from the pro-British Cherokee Indians. Initially known as Mount Prospect, until American Revolution War, Colonel Robert Love donated land for the formation of Waynesville. In 1808 his brother wrote a bill that would soon pass through legislation in order to form Haywood County and the city of Waynesville. Love named the town after one of his former general, Mad Anthony Wayne. The town slowly grew until the Civil War threatened to burn the town to the ground. Union soldiers surrounded the last remaining Confederate forces of North Carolina, in the town of Waynesville. What is thought to possibly be the last shots of the war were fired in Waynesville's historic Sulphur Springs district. In 1995 Waynesville and Hazelwood merged into one, and Waynesville became the county seat of Haywood County. Nowadays Waynesville is a great location for tourism with many natural wonders just waiting to be explored. Although the Biltmore estate is primarily known for its cultural and aesthetic appeal as America's castle, the estate has also made a major contribution to American forestry by restoring western North Carolina's forests and implementing forestry practices that are still relevant today. Webster's dictionary defines forestry as the science and practice of developing, caring for, or cultivating forests. On June 1, 1888, George Washington Vanderbilt purchased the first of 661 parcels of land that would ultimately become Biltmore. Before Biltmore's establishment, Asheville and its surrounding greenery had been removed for use as farmland as well as to provide timber. The mountain farmers who were unaware of the damage of their practices ultimately ruined the land and made it useless. Since many families were unable to grow food for themselves, they then had to sell their destroyed land to support their families. Vanderbilt ended up buying most of the land from mountain families for a very good price. Frederick Law Olmsted, Biltmore's landscape architect, suggested that Vanderbilt make the new land a forest. This made Mr. Vanderbilt the first of the large forest owners in America to adopt the practice of forestry and making the forest the first systematically managed forest. With such a large forest, there was a need for foresters who were well educated on the subject. This was rare in Appalachia at the time. Therefore Vanderbilt and his team established the Biltmore Forest School in 1898. This school implemented many practices in forestry that are still taught and used today, such as the Biltmore stick, which is designed to help measure the amount of timber a tree can produce. How has occupational safety changed from the 1930s to now? In the novel Serena, many individuals died while on the job due to machine malfunctions and environmental conditions. One scene in Chapter 19 the book was talking about how a log slipped and killed a man and a crane slipped and crushed a man's skull. Then it proceeded to talk about how men would carry Lucky Charms and bring whiskey to the job. In today's society, if you were caught with alcohol you would get released from the job immediately. Also back in the 30s there were very little to no safety laws. There was an act passed in the 20s that required me to wear hard hats, but nobody wore them and nobody cared if they did or not. Since OSHA was formed in the 1970s, safety laws have been getting stricter towards the working man. If you were on a logging site today you would have to wear long pants with steel toe boots, an orange vest, and hard hat and work gloves. If you were cutting trees you would have to wear the same exact things and include a safety harness with a tie-off point for just in case someone fell. They would just fall a certain distance and then they could be rescued instead of failing 20-30 feet and hitting the ground and dying. So as we look at the safety laws from then and compare them to now, the workplace is a safer place than what it used to be. Although most of us who live in Appalachia today are not superstitious, we live in an area where superstitions were once believed and often repeated. These superstitions were most often used to predict death, illness, and the weather. For example, milk or food stolen from a neighbor and fed to a child will cure whooping cough. As shown in the novel Serena, Appalachian folklore once played a vital role in reinforcing community bonds and provided a source of comfort in a harsh and challenging environment. In the 1700s, over 200,000 people from Northern Ireland immigrated to America and over 1 million Scotch-Irish people arrived throughout the 1800s. Among these immigrants were old women who knew the ways of the old world witchcraft and herbalism. These women were witches known as granny women. Granny women were often the only people able to provide health care in the area. Because of the rugged terrain and rural areas in the Appalachians, it was hard to reach a doctor and difficult for doctors to get to patients in time. Thus, granny women were often the only people practicing health care in the poor rural areas of Appalachia. They grew most of their own herbs and knew which combination of herbs would provide the best remedy. The granny women also used their midwifery skills to help with almost half the births in southern Appalachia. Childbirth was very dangerous at this time. Granny women used some superstitions to ensure the mother and baby would survive. If the windows were open during labor, it was symbolic of opening the birth canal for easier delivery. Also, to cut the pain, an axe would be placed under the bed, as mentioned in Serena. Power was commonly given to one female per generation. These powers can include making predictions and seeing into people's souls. In Appalachia, magic included superstitions, folk remedies, faith healing, storytelling, and divination. Traditionally, children would grow up hearing stories of magic and a family member would give the child magical abilities when the children were old enough. Another way to receive magical abilities was through God or nature. A person who was struck by lightning was believed to have magic powers. Common ways of predicting the future were reading tea leaves, watching for signs in the clouds, and throwing of the bones. Even today, reading tea leaves is still used for foretelling the future. Today in Appalachia, folklore is passed down from generation to generation. Some people still believe in some superstitions. These superstitions and folklore remain as part of the Appalachian culture, and it is important to the people of Appalachia to preserve this part of their history.